Hey guys, Morgan the Rebellious Reviewer, where we talk about all things music. As you can see, we have a bit of a new setup with these two records right here. And I'm wearing a new outfit because I don't want to wear a hot leather jacket in the middle of spring or summer anymore. Especially not when I live in Texas. Oh, and today we're going to be ranking every single album by 21 Pilots from worst to best in my opinion.
I wish I found some better sounds no one's ever heard.
For those of you who don't know, between late high school and my freshman year of college, 21 Pilots was my absolute favorite band. I owned 2 t-shirts from them, including the one I'm wearing right now. I owned 3 of their albums on CD, and I even tried to get my high school English teacher into them. It kinda worked, actually. But anyway, even now, I still have those t-shirts and CDs, and I even have 2 of their albums on vinyl, as you can see right here.
Nice to know my kind.
That said, they have shrunk on me ever so slightly. I still love them to death, don't get me wrong, but man, do their albums have a little bit of filler on them. Even my number 1 album on this list is not a flawless album by any stretch of the imagination. However, I do love them, and they are the only band that I've rated every single album for on Rate Your Music, so I figured, why not do a ranking? Before we get started, keep in mind that I'm only ranking studio albums, meaning no EPs, no compilations, no singles, and no fun intended, because that's a Tyler Joseph album, not a 21 Pilots album. Also, this is just my opinion, so feel free to leave your own list of the 21 Pilots albums ranked in the comment section below. With that, let the hot takes begin.
They don't know you, and neither do I. So here's a prime example of a stand-up guy who hates what he believes and loves it at the same time. Here's my brother and his head screwed up, but that's alright. Time games moment and the
Regional at best is basically a demo masquerading as a studio album. Don't get me wrong, it's not a bad demo, but something had to come last, and for me, I'm going with regional at best. Many of the songs on this particular album are just older, not as well produced versions of songs on Vessel, which, yeah, they're tolerable for the most part, except for that Ode to Sleep original version, which is very annoying with that stuttering effect and is about as poorly produced as I've ever heard a song be. But, yeah. Most of the original versions are tolerable. However, none of them are as good as the versions on Vessel. As for the original songs, they're mostly pretty good. My favorite track on here is easily Kitchen Sink, which is very creative with its metaphors and has some great rapping and even some halfway decent singing, which is kind of a rough spot on this album, especially on Glowing Eyes, which with its annoying melody on the chorus in particular. There are other great songs on here as well, including Ruby, Slowtown, Forest. All of those are great and have absolutely beautiful synths. However, even most of my favorite songs on here suffer from nasal singing and overproduction from time to time. The version of Lovely that appears on this album, for just an example, is an overproduced mess that makes Tyler Joseph sound like a robot. And the sad thing about this is The UK version of Vessel has a re-recorded version of this song, and that's one of my favorite 21 Pilot songs of all time, so this could have been a great project with better production and a better budget and more singing practice from Tyler Joseph. So yeah, this album's a bit of a mess, but it's still at least somewhat enjoyable. At the very least, it shows where this band will be going in the future once this album is out of their system. Once they get a better budget, especially. Now for...
Oh, misbeliever, my pretty sleeper, your twisted mind is like snow on the road.
While this album is way more interesting than Regional at best, I'd still say it's a pretty flawed album. It's got the same terrible singing at points, but I am putting this above Regional at best ever so slightly, just because, one, it has more songs I like, and two, it doesn't have any songs I hate. Well, even Regional at best has that god-awful version of Ode to Sleep. This, meanwhile, the worst song on it is Before You Start Your Day, and that's more boring than it is bad. My favorite song on here is easily Oh Misbeliever, mainly because Tyler Joseph's singing on it is absolutely gorgeous, and also because I'm a sucker for gloomy, wintry kind of songs. I am a black metal fan, after all. Tyler also shows his storytelling chops on songs like The Pantaloon, Taxi Cab, and March to the Sea, of course. The album is also the best at completely defying genre on songs like Fall Away and Isle of Flightless Birds. The latter of which being especially excellent. However, like I said, some of Tyler's singing is still kind of rough on this album, especially on songs like Fall Away and Aircatcher, both of which have great instrumentation that gets ruined by Tyler's terrible singing. Also, some of these songs can get a little bit dull, like the aforementioned Before You Start Your Day, and especially that opening on Implicit Demand for Proof. Because of these flaws, this is one of those albums that I cherry-pick certain songs from. I still recommend checking it out if you've never heard it, especially if you're a 21 Pilots fan. If not, this won't change your mind, but it's still an interesting piece of their history, even if it's not their best.
They say in your lane, boy, and we go where we want to. They think this thing is a highway, but will they be alive tomorrow?
Ah, yes. The album with all their big hits on it. This is the point where I really start to enjoy the albums I'm listing. This album is not perfect, not even close, but man, are the high points high on this one. In particular, Heavy Dirty Soul has some of the best rapping of Tyler Joseph's career, and Tear in My Heart is as close to pop perfection as you can get, pretty much. And the chorus of Doubt Will Never Leave My Brain. The album as a whole is more mainstream than most of 21 Pilots' albums. And yeah, it does play it a little too safe sometimes. However, I still love it for two reasons. One, the half of it that is good is really, really good. And two, this is my first 21 Pilots album. Yup, I was one of those fans. I first heard about 21 Pilots when I was watching one of the Double Agents Top 20 Ranked videos back in 2016. I I heard the song Ride in one of those videos, and even though he didn't like it, I thought it sounded amazing, so I checked it out, and then I later checked out the whole album, and it blew my mind at the time. Nowadays, I'm a more experienced music listener. I can recognize the faults, but I still really like it. It'll never not have a special place in my heart. Yeah, to this day, I absolutely love Heavy Dirty Soul. Stressed Out is extremely relatable. Tearing My Heart and Doubt are, of course, great. And the wonderfully eclectic Lane Boy is amazing as well. I'll even throw Hometown and We Don't Believe What's on TV on there. And while the other songs aren't as good, they're all still pretty good. So, yeah. This is a great album. Even if only half of it is exactly great and the other half is just good thanks to relatable lyrics, catchiness, and nostalgia. Number 3.
Slow down on Monday, not a sound. On Wednesday, yeah, might get loud. On Friday,
I'll bet that when you clicked on this video, you thought that this was gonna be in last place, didn't you? Well, how's this for a hot take? It's in the top 3. I never got the hate for Scaled and Icy. I mean, yeah, it's different from most of 21 Pilots' discography, but who cares? It still sounds great, and it's still a really fun album. Every time I hear songs like Bounce Man and Saturday, I want to get up and dance. I once heard Mark from Spectrum Pulse describe this as AJR if they were good. And while I don't hate AJR nearly as much as most people in this community, I can kind of see where he's coming from. Mainly because this album is all candy-coated synths, kind of cheesy, goofy lyrics, extreme levels of catchiness, slightly eclectic indie pop, but it's a lot less overproduced than anything AJR have ever put out. And I like that this album has just a subtle hint of darkness underneath all the candy-coated sunshine and rainbow stuff. And the reason I'm putting it above the last 3 albums on here is the fact that, 1, it's a little bit more concise than most 21 Pilots albums, with only 11 songs instead of the usual 14, and 2, it's just a lot less flawed. There's a lot less filler on this album than there was on Regional at Best, or the self-titled, or even Blurry Face. I get why some people hate this, but I can't agree. If you haven't listened to this album in a while and you just gave it one chance, give it another one. You might change your mind.
no, I move slow. I wanna stop time. I'll sit here till I find the problem.
A lot of people think this is 21 Pilots' best album, and I can kind of see why. It's their least accessible. Their most music nerd friendly, if you will. However, while I do think this is a great album, I do think it has some filler on it. Namely the cheesy Smithereens and the ugly sounding Cut My Lip. If you can look past that, though, you'll find great songs all over this album. Jumpsuit, for example, contains one of the best bass lines of 21 Pilots' career, along with their first use of a guitar, and Levitate has the best rap performance Tyler Joseph has ever given. My Blood rivals Jumpsuit for how great the bass line on that one is. Chlorine is extremely catchy. Leave the City always tears my heart right out of my chest. Legend is an amazing ode to Tyler's grandpa. And Pet Cheetah is just an experimental masterpiece, and even Bandito is quite beautiful. But of course, we can't talk about this album without mentioning Neon Gravestones, so here goes. This is the song that made me hate 13 Reasons Why. I read that book when I was in high school at the Discipline campus, mainly because I was forced to, and let's just say that after that happened, I started having fantasies of killing myself for revenge against all the people I felt had wronged me. Yeah, it just made my depression worse. But I didn't realize it at the time, and now that I've heard this song, I realize it. Thank you for this, Tyler Joseph. Yeah, this album may not be number one on this list, but it still has some of my favorite 21 Pilots songs.
I'm taking over my body, back in control, no more shoddy. I bet a lot of me was lost, teasing, crossing eyes and dotted. I fought it a lot, and it seems a lot like flesh is all I got. Not anymore, flesh out the door, swat!
I'll admit, for the longest time, I thought Trench was better than Vessel. However, while Trench may have more great songs on it, the great songs on Vessel are just so much greater, and there's still quite a few of them. For example, Vessel contains the good version of Ode to Sleep, and that just happens to be my favorite 21 Pilots song of all time. Fun fact, I played this song in the car with my dad, and it's his favorite 21 Pilots song too. Also, the closing track, Truce, is absolutely beautiful and really does give me hope as someone who's dealt with depression and suicidal thoughts. Holding On to You is also a great eclectic track, especially with the sample of Lean With It, Rock With It. Migraine is a top 3 best rap performance for Tyler Joseph. And Semi-Automatic is quite relatable to me as someone with anger management issues. Car Radio, meanwhile, took some time to grow on me, but once it did, I realized just how amazing the symbolism in that song is, turning something as simple as a car radio into something so much deeper. And it's also surprisingly catchy for a spoken word piece. Other great songs include the catchy Fake You Out and the oh-so-relatable Guns for Hands. Seriously, this album is stacked with great songs. Even my least favorite song on here, The Run and Go, is still tolerable. If you don't like this album or think it's cheesy or don't like 21 Pilots in general, I get it. But I personally think this is a great balance between the poppier side 21 Pilots showed on Blurry Face and Scaled and Icy, and the more indie side that they showcased on the self-titled, Regional at Best, and of course, Trench. Vessel. A far from perfect album, but a great one all the same. And that's my list. Don't forget to comment, like, and subscribe. Leave your own list in the comment section below. I'm Morgan the Rebellious Reviewer, and I'm out.